So I want to talk about three main topics tonight, just very briefly on each one, and then if we've got some questions or discussions we can get to. One, I want to try to talk some of you into becoming poll workers. We need poll workers. We're particularly going to need them when we get to the general election in November, because the number of workers we have in each poll is based on what we think the turnout will be. Primary elections usually don't have nearly the turnout of general elections and stuff like that. I also want to talk a little bit about if you want to be an observer in an election for the Democratic Party, for example, what is that process? And then I want to talk about this redistricting vote that is coming up on April 21st. Which is our first election. This is a 3-election year. And so that means, again, even more work for the registrar's office and for poll workers and people like that. Okay, if you want to become a poll worker, if you're interested in it, you're going to have some training. We've got 3 classes of poll workers. We've got just regular poll workers, then we have a head officer in each polling place, and then we have an assistant head. Now, the head officer and the assistant head are people who've worked a lot of elections for us. They've been poll workers for quite a while. They've done a good job, and so a lot of the training you're going to get if you become a poll worker is going to be on-the-job training. And it's going to be done on election day, and it's going to be led by the head officer and the assistant head. And they're going to probably let you do a little bit of everything. They're going to let you work the paper poll books for a while. They're going to let you work the electronic poll books for a while. They're going to let you handle same-day registrations for a while and just give you on-the-job training. Before that, you'll attend a 2-hour training session that's conducted by the general registrar and the Electoral board. I'm one of the Democrats on the Electoral board for Alleghany County. Ben, sitting back there, is the second Democrat on the Electoral board, and the Republican in here tonight. He's a nice guy, Randy Tucker. I've worked with him for about 4 years now on the Electoral board. We have 2 Democrats and 1 Republican because we've got a Democratic governor. Under Ralph Youngkin, we had 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. So the law is really big into parity. If it has anything to do with an election, make sure you've got both parties represented. But at the same time, they tell us, even though I'm on the Electoral board, because I'm a Democrat, I can't behave like a Democrat. I have to be nonpartisan. And the same goes for you all. We need more Democratic poll workers, I suspect, simply because in Alleghany County there are not many of us, and there are lots of Republicans. But even though you're a Democrat, you're going to have to check your donkey at the door on election day. You're not allowed to talk politics. You're not allowed to be partisan in the polling place at all, because we don't want to give anybody an excuse to find something wrong with the way, or something unfair with the way we conduct elections. Because there are a lot of people out there looking to find examples of that. So we go out of our way to stress the importance of fairness. So you'll get 2 weeks of training, 2 hours, 2 weeks, God. You'll get 2 hours of training about 10 days before your first election. You'll also get a little bit of homework. You'll be given about 25 pages of written information about how to behave and what you need to do as a poll worker. And you're supposed to read that before the election. Not memorize it, but just become familiar with what's in it. That way, if something comes up on election day, you'll remember, oh, I read that. It was about halfway through here. And so you can very quickly find it and get instructions. And then hopefully you'll keep coming back as a poll worker and eventually work your way up to assistant head or a head officer, and then you can help us with the training. Now, we were lucky enough about 3 years ago to talk the Board of Supervisors into raising election worker pay because election workers were getting the same pay they got back during the Great Depression, I think. And so we said, you can't do that anymore. You demand so much more of them, and people can find a lot of excuses not to be a poll worker, especially when they watch TV and see what happens in some places to poll workers. So the good news is that we now pay regular officials $16 an hour. We pay assistants $18 an hour and head officials $20 an hour. We base your pay on 17 hours. You're going to put in a 17-hour workday. You have to be at the polling place at 5. You have the polls open at 6. They close at 7. And then you're probably going to have a couple more hours of work because none of the officials can leave until everybody leaves. You can't leave when the polls close at 7 because there's lots of paperwork that's got to be done, lots of forms that have to be signed by everyone, and everyone there has to be able to certify that, yep, I was there and I saw everything that happened. So you're going to put in a 17-hour day or maybe longer if you're a head official. So you're looking at the daily pay then for a regular poll worker would be $272. That's better than $50. And so that makes it seem a little more bearable, I think. So I have up here applications to be a poll worker if you're interested. And so grab one as you leave. It's a very simple form. It's just one page and it basically asks what's your name and address and where can we get hold of you. The rest of the pages that are here are things that if you are accepted as a poll worker, you'll eventually have to fill out. But all you got to do is fill out this first page. And then the best bet, you can mail it in to the registrar's office, but the best bet when you go by to early vote, if you haven't yet, over in Rosedale, bring this with you. And hopefully Tiny, the registrar, will be there and she'll interview you right then and get the additional information she needs. So if you're thinking you'd be interested, this form is what you need. Now I've also been asked to talk a little bit about people who want to become observers. The law is very strict about who can be in a polling place and who can have anything to do with the polling place. You can come in to vote, and that's about it, unless you're a sworn official. Now, the exception is a candidate for office is allowed to go in any polling place any number of times during an election day, as long as they're not in the any one polling place more than 10 minutes total. So if they want to pop into the Clifton Forge Firehouse and stay for a minute and then leave, then they can go to the armory and stay for a minute and leave, and they can repeat that 10 times. But other than that, they're not allowed to be there except to vote. And so this is the kind of stuff you learn during the training. If you really want to find out more about elections and your work as a poll worker, there is, if you go to the Virginia Department of Elections, and I've got another handout when you come out to pick this one up, you can pick this up, and I've got the web address and everything for that. You can go to the Virginia Department of Elections, go to the little search box, and type in, there's various things you can type in, but what you're looking for is the GREB handbook. GR stands for General Registrar, and EB Electoral Board. And it's some 22 chapters long. Chapter 11 deals with what you do on election day, but virtually every aspect of the electoral process has a chapter in that book. And the book not only gives you instructions on how to handle stuff, but also refers to the state code so that you can find the exact code language that generated that. But looking through that will give you a really good idea of what poll workers and election officials do. It's also real good to have in mind if you hear somebody spreading what you're sure is garbage about the electoral process. I hear that all the scanners are hooked to internet and the Chinese are able through electrical outlets to manipulate. Go to the GREB and find out how things really work.
Can we throw them out of the polling office? Can we throw them out of the polling office?
No. Yeah, that's one thing you'll learn. Everybody has a right to vote, and you cannot interfere with that. So if somebody comes in and says, I want to vote, and we say, you're not registered here. You're registered at the Armory in Clifton. You'll have to go there to vote. No, I've always voted here. I demand to vote here. We can't kick you out. We'll let you vote, but we'll make you vote provisionally. And then we won't count your ballot during the canvass. And we'll tell you that. We'll tell you, no, you're in the wrong precinct. You got to be in the right precinct. If you'll just walk down the trail there, you can vote and it'll count. But if they insist, if somebody's creating a disturbance, like brandishing a firearm, you're not allowed to be armed in a polling place unless you're a cop. Brandishing a firearm. As the sheriff deputies take them out, if they want to vote, you're going to have could you take his cuffs off for a minute? So he can fill out the form, because we can't interfere with his right to vote. Everybody has the right to vote. If there's any doubt about whether you're a qualified voter, we do a provisional ballot. And then in the week following the election, that's what keeps the Electoral Board busy, is we have to research all the provisional ballots and decide which ones are valid and which ones aren't. Okay, if you want to be an observer, the main thing you've got to do, if you want to observe this upcoming special election on April 21st, you need to get Julie to write a letter to the registrar naming you as a representative of the Democratic Party of Alleghany County wanting to be an observer. Tell what polling place you want to be an observer in. And And you can put, if there are 8 of you who want to be observers, you can put all 8 in the same letter. Make copies of that letter. Send 1 copy to the registrar's office. And then give a copy to each of the observers, because they're going to be asked to show that on election day. So they need a copy. They could just show up on election day if they wanted to, but please don't do that, because if there's going to be an observer, we've got to make arrangements in the polling place, because the law is very clear as to, there are certain things they can't see and certain things they must be allowed to see and hear. And so we got to put chairs for them where that condition can be met and stuff like that. There's certain things they can and cannot do. And again, I've got another handout. If you're interested in being an observer, the do's and don'ts of being an observer in an election. I'll put up here so you can pick it up when you grab your copy of the application form to vote. Okay, let's talk about the proposed redistricting. The ballot is real simple. There's 1 item on the ballot. How many of you have already early voted? Oh, okay, so you know this. Okay. So there's 1 item on the ballot, yes or no. It's fun to stand in the registrar's office, see people take the ballot, go over to the little voting station, and then you see them turning it over and looking and checking the back. What else? Is this all? Yep, that's all. You've got that one issue. Okay, what that is asking is, are you okay with changing the voting districts even though it's not at the 10-year time to do so? This is the current setup for our 10 seats. Wait a minute. Yeah, right now, our 11 seats, that's what I thought. Right now we have 5 Republicans and 6 Democrats in the House of Representatives in Virginia. And that's based on our population. And so the state is divided into 11 congressional districts. And this is the way they currently are. This is the proposal at the bottom for how they want to change it if this referendum passes on the April 21st. And again, I've got copies of this map, so grab one of those on your way home to peruse. What they've tried to do is to, I guess it's safe to say, gerrymander the districts to give a better chance of getting more Democrats. And the reason the General Assembly wants to do that is to counter some of the things they did in Texas. It's very similar to what California is doing to counter some of the things that President Trump wanted to do in Texas. So these are the new districts. Now the way they did it to make it more favorable to elect more Democrats to Congress, and their goal is to get 10 Democrats and 1 Republican, rather than 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. That's the General Assembly's goal, at least as I see it. And the way they did that is, if you study these, you'll see that several of the districts, they extended into the Richmond area, which is heavily Democratic, or the Northern Virginia area, which is heavily Democratic. So a district that ended up in the South suddenly goes a little more north and picks up some Northern Virginia voters. And districts that were maybe over to the east now move to the middle a little bit to pick up some of the Richmond suburbs and pick up some more Democrats. They couldn't come up with a map that would allow all 11 to likely be Democrats, because down here where we are in Southwest Virginia, there are just an awful lot of Republicans, a humongous bunch of Republicans. So they kind of made us here in the 6th district, I don't know what you'd call it, but we're going to end up probably, I would guess, with Ben Klein as our member of Congress, because it is just heavily Republican. They couldn't come up with a map that did not have this one district that was going to have to be sacrificed to the Republicans. Is their plan, or what they came up with. Now, what they tried to do with redoing the districts, some of the Democrats who've been elected previously had double-digit wins. In other words, they won by 11, 12% of the vote. So they'd take those Democratic districts and they'd peel off some of the Democrats. They'd say, well, the Democrats won by 12%, but they didn't need to win by 12%. If they won by 5%, that's just as good as 12%. So, and counting, I think the Democrats in the General Assembly were counting on the idea that with what's going on at the national level, the Democrats weren't going to do any worse this election than the last election, probably going to do better. So again, we can afford to shave some Democratic votes away from the Democratic winners and move those people to a more Republican district to make it more Democratic. So that's the thinking behind all the redrawing here, is let's see if we can redraw the districts to add more Democrats to districts that didn't have enough to quite produce a Democratic winner, but not lose any seats that already have a Democrat by making sure we don't peel off enough voters to make it impossible for the Democrat. Now, one consequence that I know a lot of people in Alleghany County are talking about is it makes things a lot more difficult for Beth Macy. Because I think Beth was, if we go with the old way, Beth wanted to run against Ben Klein and thought she could put together a campaign that could beat him. Now she is in a really strong Republican district, and she's got 3 other Democrats who might join a primary. So there's a real good chance she'll be primaried. And of course, if you're primaried, that uses up an awful lot of money and effort and stuff like that. So that's one thing if you just listen out on the streets. So I'm not going to tell anybody how to vote, of course, because I'm nonpartisan. And I figure you all know how you're going to vote, or you've already voted on this issue. And my guess your vote had an awful lot to do with what you thought about the man in the White House. But that is your decision. You know, I know it's hard on people who are election workers not to be political, especially on election day. You know, I taught history and political science for 46 years at what was then Dabney. So you know I'm into it, and I love it. And for me, not to give an opinion is something I've got to keep pinching myself and say, "Shut up, John." You know, and I never take sides, since I am a Democratic representative on the Electoral Board. I never take sides in a primary. I have to be really neutral to all Democrats. Now, once the primary is over and we got a Democratic candidate, I do put up 1 yard sign supporting the Democratic candidate. I think that's legit. And besides that, my neighbors, I'm afraid, if I didn't have any yard signs up before a general election, would call the sheriff's office and ask for a well-being check. And that'd be kind of embarrassing. Okay, so we're hoping, I love this little bag. I love boring elections. That's my credo as a poll worker, that nothing beats a boring election. They're hard enough if nothing bad happens. So I hope we have 3 very boring elections, and I hope by the time of the general election, I see some of you in election officer training. So up here, the application, some information. If you want more details about how the decision was made to redistrict, there's a real good article in the Cardinal, and here's a web link to that. So you can follow that through. And then just the other day, let's see what day it was, March 29th, Sunday, March 29th, there's a real good article in the Roanoke Times. I just read it today. That's why I don't have copies for it, because I get the Roanoke Times by mail now. They'll no longer deliver it in my neighborhood, and I was promised that would mean there'd be a 1-day delay. The delay is more typically 7 or 8 days. I go 4 days and get nothing, and then I'll get 3, but 3 very old papers the next day. Okay, any comments, questions?
I was just wondering, not that it's going to affect us now, but on these possible plans for...
There's a poll worker for you. She can tell you how neat it is. Yeah.
For voter ID.
Uh-huh.
How is that going to affect us? I mean, are we going to have to... Does everybody start from scratch then?
It depends. That's what they would like to do. That's what Trump would like to do, is he'd like everybody to have to re-register and then have to show a birth certificate or a passport, which means lots of people couldn't register, would really mess up same-day registration, and of course that's the goal. But you do, in Virginia, you do have to show identification to vote. So you'll hear people say, what's wrong with showing identification to vote? There's nothing wrong with it. And you do have to. Most people either use their voting card, of course, well, not most people, because most people threw it away. So I didn't get that. But, or they use their driver's license. Now you can use other things. You can use a student ID. You know, you'll find in the instruction for poll workers, there are about 25 things that are acceptable ID. But the main thing is they have to have most of them have to have a photo on it and have to be from some, at least semi-official
Now
source.
they want to change it to birth certificates and things that are
Hard to get, yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
fewer people voting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, John, I'm a little bit confused about the districts that you mentioned. My understanding is that if the amendment passes, Alleghany County will be in the 9th congressional district, is that correct?
Let me give you. I'll give you your map now. But that does not excuse you from picking up an application.
But it,
Yeah, we'll be.
so we'd be in the 9th. Now, Ben Klein and Beth Macy are currently running for the 6th.
6th district. Mm-hmm.
So is it correct to assume that both Ben Klein and Beth Macy will continue running for the 6th district? Roanoke will be in the 6th district.
Yeah. Here's what the Roanoke. This is how the Roanoke Times. They have Klein.
For 6th district.
And
And I think Beth Macy would be running for the 6th district.
and let me see, and also Macy, Pirelli, and Rosal.
Okay, so those 4 would be running for the 6th.
6th district.
And then I believe there's 3 Democratic candidates for District 9.
Yeah, I think that's
And
right.
then Morgan Griffith.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
People who, if the redistricting passes, people will have to make a decision as to where they're gonna run after the redistricting passes. You don't have, in Virginia, you do not have to live in this congressional district that you're running for,
Yeah,
because Morgan Griffith doesn't live in the 9th
Yeah.
right now. Klein could either choose to be in the 6th, or he could choose to go to the 9th. And he could run against Morgan Griffith if he wanted.
yeah. Bet he doesn't want to. And that's something too, to be a poll worker, you have to be a registered voter in Virginia, but not necessarily in the county or city where you're working the polls. You just have to be a registered voter in the city. If you want to be an observer, the same rule applies. You have to be a registered voter in Virginia. So if you came in from Indiana and wanted to be an observer, we wouldn't allow it. You have to be registered somewhere in Virginia.
What about,
John, I have another question regarding poll workers. I've talked to people who would like to be poll workers, but they're afraid. Are you aware of, in Alleghany County, any incidents of people becoming disruptive or threatening or violent at polling places?
You get some angry people, but never to the point that we've had to call the law. This is my 6th year on the electoral board. Right before I entered the electoral board, up at Dolly Inn, which is the VFW, is a voting place, there was an incident of a guy threatening to go get a gun that required the sheriff intervention, and they stopped the guy at his house and said, "You're staying here until 9 o'clock at night." And apparently he was a well-known crazy to the deputies, and they just put the kibosh to it. We get really strong support from the police departments and sheriff's office. We on the electoral board meet with them before elections, talk about strategy, stuff like that. They are willing to provide escorts for poll workers, bringing ballots and material back to the office after election day is over. They put extra deputies and extra police on the road, and they visit polls regularly during the day. And they don't park at the poll because that tends to suppress voter turnout. But they'll stop by kind of like a candidate for 2 minutes. Hi, everybody. Drove by. How's it going? And so you'll see cops a couple times or more a day. And we on the electoral board, we hit every poll at least once on electoral day. And then of course everybody has cell phones and stuff like that, unless you happen to work at Dunlap or Boiling Springs. and then I guess that's when you use your homing pigeon. Yeah.
Have we discussed having ICE representatives in the polling places?
No discussion has come up from, if there's much chance it's going to happen to us, we'll hear from the State Board of Elections beforehand. Well, my guess is they're busy in airports now. So, but who knows what'll happen by November.
John, will you talk about how this affects women in their vote, and they're changing their maybe they're divorced and remarried and changing their, would you address what the importance?
Okay, you're talking about the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is Trump's proposal for reorganizing the midterm election, and he'd like to have it in place by November. That's getting real close. And what that would require is taking control of voting away from states and putting it in the hands of the federal government. So that's obviously going to be challenged. But what he would like to do is outlaw a lot of mail voting, even though he voted for the Republican who was defeated by a Democrat at Mar-a-Lago. He voted by mail, but it says that nothing can be counted that arrives at the election board after voting day. Right now, if you have a mail-in ballot, as long as you postmark it on election day, if we get it by the Monday after, we have to count it, or we get to count it. So that gives the post office 6 days to deliver it. Now, if your mail's like my mail, 6 days ain't enough. So I wouldn't wait on that. He wants to eliminate that so that, and he basically wants to undo registrations. Everybody would have to re-register, and they would have to prove citizenship. And about the only way you can do that is with a birth certificate or a passport. And of course, there are lots of people who have neither. And particularly, women are very unlikely to have a birth certificate that has their married name, plus the paperwork that shows that they changed their name when they got married. And so it would really hurt women voting.
Would that be considered a poll tax?
That's one of the criticisms, particularly Democrats in Congress are
You
making.
guys pay
Yeah.
$175
Uh-huh.
to be able to get
Yeah.
permission to vote.
Uh-huh.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all, and remember, you got stuff to pick up.